All right, last week we talked a lot about our personal health choices and how we are so thankful for the crunchy movement.
This week we'll look at the dark side of crunchy life
Dun, dun.
and why we think it's poisoning our generation more than the toxins we consume.
So our question is there a way to find balance? Of course. Let's get into it.
This is the Balanced Family Podcast with Ben.
And Jessica, there's a lot to balance when you have a family. Marriage, kids, health, career, while you're trying to balance all the opinions out there on how to do things right.
Today we'll cut through the noise, tackle hard questions, and share stories as we try to get to the heart of the things that really matter. So last week we touched on, that was a fun discussion about just how crunchy we are. And I guess the conclusion was there's some areas we're pretty crunchy, but overall we're scrunchy. Wouldn't you say?
Yes, I agree.
Mm-hmm. And we kind of touched on just a little bit of our journey. We'll talk more about too, about just navigating the dark side of crunchy life, which I'll define later on. But we like naturally gravitate to the crunchy movement, right? When you, it's like
you should see my Instagram feed, my personal Instagram feed. It's all crunchy things.
Yeah. Well, and like
I genuinely enjoy learning about it.
Yeah.
I don't enjoy implementing all of it.
Yeah.
But I enjoy learning about all of it.
Yeah. And when we were discussing, I was reflecting on just how much, like, I don't even hardly drink soda. I mean, like very rarely. Like I eat whole foods like so much because it just makes me feel better. It's not even like this, I'm committed to being crunchy. It's just like, it's really not even, and this is the one thing I was thinking about last week is that sometimes it's not really about crunchy or not crunchy. It's like literally just health, you know? Health. And people have been health conscious forever. It's just now, if you're more health conscious, you're usually more aware of some of the problems in our food industry and how there's just so much fake stuff in our over-processed foods. And it reminds me of this one time. You ever read those Lonely Planet like travel books?
No.
Well,
I'm sure you did.
Yeah, I just love geography. I mean, that's why I taught geography and history and all that. But I love those travel books, reading about other countries. And I remember when I traveled out of the country, when I was younger, I would buy those books and read them. But one day I was like, I'm going to read the United States one. Like, what do they write about the United States for people that come from a completely different culture? When I was reading that book, one of the things that they talk about was processed foods. It was just like, hey, you need to understand that it's like, unless you go to a restaurant, like everything else is just like snack food, and Americans love packages, quick, it talks about fast food and different things, which fast food's all over the world. But my point is, like, if you're an outsider coming to our culture, that like shocks you of just like, dang, like everybody's eating everything out of a package.
I remember our good friend who lived here came from Trinidad, and she just like gained a ton of weight because it's just like, it wasn't that she was walking less or anything. It wasn't that. It was actually literally the food that she was eating was so different than the food that she was eating in Trinidad, and she gained weight. And it was like so interesting to watch that happen. It made me think more about, oh yeah, like when she's in Trinidad, she's making these amazing kind of ethnically Trinidadian foods that are inherently really healthy. And that's what she ate. And then when she came here, we're like, hey, let's go to Taco Bell. Let's do this, that, and the other. And it did that. I think that was probably my first kind of aha moment of watching that happen with her and being like, oh, our lifestyle and the way that I eat and the way that we live inside of America actually is not normal to the rest of the world. And it made me kind of question, the fact that I would only eat one meal a day in college, and it would be Velveeta mac and cheese, one whole box.
Liquid gold.
It was liquid gold to me. And it was like, that's not very healthy. Okay, maybe I should stop doing this. Anyway.
Yeah. And there's obesity problems in other countries. True. When I taught English in Cairo, Egypt, years ago, I mean, there's an obesity problem in Cairo, and how the food has changed in Cairo. It's American companies. It's American fast food. It's Coca-Cola. A lot of places in the world are battling the same thing we're battling in America, and the fast-paced culture that we've exported. And let's talk about just like the forces at play. So when we talk about the dark side of crunchy life, there's a dark side to non-crunchy life too, meaning for years, you could make a pretty good argument that there are such large corporations and forces at play that have to protect
their interests,
right? That for many decades, if you're a company wanting to market a more natural product. It was just very difficult. And that's changing. And I'll mention that in a second. But we know people that work in the meat industry, for instance, and even getting the label organic. There's so much red tape and government involvement too, to actually like sell food for good health reasons. Because if you know history and what the United States was like before FDA, I mean, a lot of good things have come from more regulation. But anytime that government produces rules and regs, there are lobbyists and organizations having a major role in the formation of that. So all I had to say is like, in the crunchy perspective, there's like all this conspiracy about big pharma, big food, and all this kind of stuff. And while a lot of it is overblown, a lot of it's true.
Yeah. Actually, I would say a lot of it is true.
But what's interesting now is it's just the irony of capitalism, Jessica. The irony of capitalism now, the U.S. natural and organic products industry reached $303 billion in sales in 2023.
Billion, wow.
Yeah, marking a 4.8 increase from the year before. Projections indicate continued growth and that sales are going to just continue to grow in like the natural organic market. And so like the kind of the takeaway from that is that once something becomes popularized in the public, like people try to find a way to make money off of it. And that's what is happening. And you could be like, well, that's a good thing. But when you get into the crunchy rabbit hole of their world, there's like the poser brands and then there's like the real brands. And so there's constantly questioning like, well, what is truly whole and healthy if now this is sold on the shelves of Walmart or some mainstream store? Is it actually truly organic or truly healthy?
A lot of the original like 7th generation, there's a lot of brands that originally were even Dr. Bronner's. There's a lot of brands. I could go on and on about this. You've hit a chord in me.
Yeah.
These brands that basically have been bought by P&G and by other larger Johnson & Johnson, like all these bigger brands that are basically like, hey, we have the capital, we're going to buy you, and kind of, you know, basically there's essentially like six main brands that control like 90% of our food and household goods. That is nuts.
Yeah.
And so when you think about it from a regulatory perspective and like a capitalistic perspective, yeah, I mean, I can understand why the crunchy folks are like, hey, I don't know if I can trust 7th generation. You know, their formulations do change over time because the goal is profit.
Absolutely.
The goal is not health. And when the goal is profit, then everything is going to get cheaper. They're going to be trying to figure out a way to make the profit margins larger. Mm-hmm. And so I understand why a lot of people are skeptical of that. And I do think that a large issue with, you know, it's been real big in the news today. The FDA just banned one of the red food dyes. I can't remember which one. Not Red 40, but Red 4 maybe. Anyway, and I was reading up on a lot of it. And, you know, there's a lot of the crunchy people that I follow are like, yes, like grassroots efforts have won, because this particular dye has actually been banned in cosmetics since the 90s.
Wow.
So, but it has been in all of our foods since then.
That's ironic.
All the foods that most kids really like. So Skittles, Pop-Tarts. I was looking at the list and I was like, uh-oh. You can see, like I said, we're crunchy, but we're not super crunchy. And
we're scrunchy.
Definitely. I personally ate a little handful of Skittles yesterday and really enjoyed them. Okay. So all the crunchy people were like, you know, this is amazing. I can't believe it took this long for us to get rid of this red food dye, et cetera, et cetera. Because I'm a balanced person, I actually follow all of the anti-crunchy accounts. So these are
I like that you do that too.
Food scientists, epidemiologists, like people who are in this world who have degrees, et cetera.
Yeah.
And they were basically like, hey, like, okay, yeah, the regulatory process of the FDA banning that, like, it's good. Basically, the red food dye was found to cause cancer in really, really, really high doses in rats. And there is a clause with the FDA or somewhere where basically it says if any ingredient has ever been found to cause cancer for anything in any dose, it has to be banned. Mm-hmm. And so this red food dye has now been banned because basically a third party petitioned the FDA to ban it. That's what happened. But what I really appreciate about these food scientists, and I think it's kind of a conclusion, so this really isn't a rabbit trail, it's actually a great wrap up of this section, is red food dye. Yes. Am I glad that it's banned? Yeah, sure. But we actually have a much larger problem here. Mm-hmm. And the much larger problem is that we have an entire food system that if you are not privileged, like, and I mean by money or about education. If you're just a regular person who, doesn't have a college degree or doesn't follow the crunchy accounts on social media or whatever, and you go out to Walmart and you buy what your family likes to eat, which would be probably processed foods, there is no one really going up against these companies to say, hey, in America, we have a problem, and it's actually the processed foods that are causing our health problems. It's not just red dye, which actually has not been shown to even cause cancer in humans. It's just in rats in really high doses. Like why are we going after that? And we're not going after these massive companies that are causing people to have significant health conditions, and our lifespans are actually decreasing.
Right.
And why? It's okay. I'm sorry. It's because of processed food. So I appreciate the crunchy movement, and I appreciate what is happening with that. But I feel like that it's just completely not dealing with this other major issue, and really actually dealing with the root issue here.
Right. Well, and as a person that studied history for many years, I always have a problem on both sides of the political spectrum when it comes to business, because there's one side that's just like free market, independence, economic growth. Like there's so much true about that, and they're against any regulation. They're against the government being in the way. And I totally get that, because you can look at systems in history or current political systems where if the government's too regulatory, it hurts business. It creates so much red tape. It frustrates people, and it's expensive for the government. But at the same time, there has to be a middle ground, because regulation works. And that's something I've seen in history, is like regulation does bring some improvements.
We don't have child labor anymore for a reason.
Well, we don't have, like, think about like a kid and you read The Jungle. What's the book? The Jungle. You know, I mean, it's like classic stuff that led to, Teddy Roosevelt becoming aware. Like those things
absolutely haunted my dreams after I read that book.
And what's unfortunate about the way our society and system works is that you have to have a lot of extremists a lot of times like crying out about this stuff before there ever is any kind of balance, which brings me to the stat I was going to share with you, that there was a survey done in 2023 that claims that nearly 90% of Americans now report being familiar, or at least somewhat familiar, with organic claims when purchasing food products, indicating a high level of consumer awareness. That's like radically different from our childhood.
100%.
Because when we were growing up, like
cosmic brownies, grape soda.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't even know what organic was. That's no way to like slam our parents. That's literally just where society was at that time.
Well, you had one friend that he didn't have any snacks.
Yeah. I shared that in another episode.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
It was just like, this house is terrible.
And he was super organic.
Yeah. I didn't even know where he got all that food. But anyway, we're talking about applies to not just food, but like literally everything, household chemicals, just like everything in our entire life is in our hands or in front of us because of a company, because somebody that has to make profit. And I get annoyed when people say they're profit generate. It's like, that's not a bad word. If you're running a business, like you have to have profit. So that's what I mean by it's a systematic issue. It's
even nonprofits have to make money.
Yes. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
We've worked for nonprofits.
Knowing,
and it's like
and just knowing people in the nonprofit world, like you want to talk about inefficiency and like being generated by money. Unfortunately.
And guess who funds the nonprofits? It's the profitable companies. Yes. Waltons. Okay. Right. I'm sorry. We live in Northwest
Arkansas. When people say
so.
like you follow the money, like it's true. When we talk about the dark side, we're going to talk more about what we as individuals can deal with. But there's a lot of forces at play on both sides of like promoting a lot of these quote unquote like more natural products. And the point I'm trying to make is like, if you're paranoid about government, if you're paranoid about big pharma and big food and corporations, you will be so stressed out when you start to quote unquote chase the money, because you realize money is behind everything.
Everything.
And
I want to make a comment about this. Influencers. Let me talk about this for a minute because we're influencers. Right. I hate saying that. It makes you feel wildly uncomfortable. But we get brands who reach out, and I've had brands reach out to us, and then I'll all of a sudden see all of the influencers that I follow. All of a sudden they're promoting this brand. And if you didn't follow all of them like I do, you maybe wouldn't know. But they're like, oh my gosh, this is so great. I love this vitamin that I'm taking or whatever. And little do the people who are following know. Yeah. But that brand is paying all of these people to say this, and they have never once used that vitamin before the brand reached out. I mean, that's just true. Right. Like it very rarely are they, and if they say that they've been using it, I don't know, maybe they have, but 9 times out of 10, they're not. The wellness industry and the crunchy, which I would say a lot of that is kind of crunchy, is so huge.
Yeah.
And influencers that are promoting all of these supplements and all of these products, like we want to talk about profit.
Yeah.
Like that is massively profitable. And these influencers are getting paid thousands upon
Yes.
thousands upon thousands upon thousands of dollars to promote something that they actually have never really used. And it's all health, right? It's in the name of health, but it's like, is it? And I don't know. Like, that's why you don't really see a whole lot of brand deals from us. Like, I have a hard time promoting something that I don't use. And I'm such a minimalist at heart that I don't use a ton. And so I don't know. It's an interesting place to be an influencer that doesn't really want to influence with any products.
Well,
but I don't know. It's just funny.
You know, working in media, like you have to have sponsors. Like you, that's like you.
True.
We have.
I'm not dogging influencers
Right,
that do that. I'm just wanting people to. I'm wanting to
They
pull
need
back
to know.
the curtain.
Then people need to know how the system works.
Because like you want to talk about chasing the money.
Yeah.
Well, it's like, hey, every crunchy influencer that you're following is making money off of the supplements that they're selling you.
Yes.
Like that is just the truth. Everyone is making money.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, like,
and actually, supplements are one of the biggest things that
the biggest
influencers
industry.
want to get into because it's recurring revenue. That they'll get a cut of that like forever.
Right.
If that subscription, and it depends on how the model of how that brand structured their affiliate program. But like, yeah, we were in that world. I just feel like we've done a good job of having balance. Like, of course, we do brand partnerships, but we just don't go crazy with it, and we try to have a balance.
There's a lot of brands that reach out that I very much just kind of semi promote. You know, And typically it's ones that I'll only respond if I'm like, hey, I actually used your product before. I can actually say I really like it instead of like just receiving it in the mail and then promoting it all of a sudden and acting like I've been using this for a long time. I think that's the thing is it feels very just disingenuous.
I'm kind of laughing about when we first started as content creators. Like when you first start out, like it's very flattering when you get contacted by a brand. Like I remember when somebody reached out to us about, it was like a beard care, like beard oil and stuff, beard products.
I forgot about that.
I remember them like emailing, and it was like such a good email. It's just like, this flattered me. I was just like, they like my beard.
Okay, that's so funny.
It was just like, wow, maybe I do want to try out their beard oils. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then when you have to create content, you're in media, like that's how you're sustained. It's tempting to sell out.
The vast majority of influencers, if they don't have their own courses, guides, or products, the only way that they make money is through brand deals. And if you see them and they're like, I retired my husband, they're taking a lot of brand deals, folks. Okay. I want to just say it. We should do a whole episode on revealing influencer culture. And listen, we're a part of it. So I'm not like dogging on people.
And there's a
but
balance.
Right.
Because there's honestly products that, I mean, what I bought you for Christmas, I saw.
Oh yeah, you totally got influenced.
Yeah, it was a great product. Like
it's an eye massager, and it says in there, restful eyes, restful life. So now I just look at Ben sometimes and I'm like, Ben, my restful eyes mean that I'm having a restful life.
Yes, yes.
I think it's from Asia. I don't know. The grammar was a little
there's
weird.
Definitely some a lot of English typos
English
all
issues.
over the instructions.
But it's a wonderful product.
Yeah, and that's what I mean is like becoming aware of products that you might end up really like. That's great. And that's why a lot of things, it's fun. It's fun to learn about new products. It's fun to see people on social media helping show how that stuff works. The point we're trying to make is that even in the crunchy life, it's commercialized.
100%.
And there are influencers selling you a lifestyle. We call them lifestyle influencers. We are technically like educational.
Yeah, we're not really lifestyle influencers.
But there are people like if you make all your money off brand deals, like you are a lifestyle. You're selling a lifestyle, and now crunchy has become this capitalized, commercialized lifestyle. And so with that comes a lot of the rhetoric and the things that audience has to buy into so that they buy the products.
Right.
And that's just something that you just don't really think about if you're just an average Joe just like scrolling through social media.
100%. And I think then, if it is a lifestyle, and then we're going to get into the dark side, I think this is a great segue into kind of the dark side of the crunchy life, because you're never crunchy enough.
Exactly.
Right? There's always something new research, I want to bring up something that I saw that is going to totally gross people out. But there's like this new trend right now of basically doing like enemas. Ugh. I don't even want to get into it, okay? Because it's about a coffee enema to get rid of your parasites. Y'all, it's like a whole thing. Okay. And I don't know how I even got on this side of the
Yeah,
social
yeah.
media world. I'm like, I don't want to be here.
Yeah.
Get me out of here. Like, please stop showing me videos of your parasites. Like, please stop.
Oh my
I
gosh.
don't even know if they are parasites. Like, I don't know what I'm looking at. Y'all. And that's what I mean is that like, the crap just keeps getting crazier and crazier.
Yeah.
If you're getting sold a lifestyle and the lifestyle is never ending and is really fear-based, which is I think what we're wanting to kind of talk about. It's preying and playing on your fears and your desires to be healthy, etc., and your belief that there's something inherently wrong with you or your body. And so it's this never-ending cycle of researching and finding out some new thing that might finally be the answer to why you have this symptom or you have this thing, or you feel as though, oh, if I just can do this, then I'll be able to ensure that my kids are healthy or grow up without autism or like whatever. It is like a Pandora's box.
Yeah, it's a Pandora's box.
In every sense of that word.
If you didn't listen to part 1, folks, you need to go listen to part 1 because a lot of this discussion was inspired by the book by Emily Morrow. Is that how you pronounce it? Morrow?
No.
Emily and Jason Morrow from Really Very Crunchy, a hilarious, like genius comedy account on social media. They have a podcast too. It's really good. And her book is all about, I'll read the subtitle again, A Beginner's Guide to Removing Toxins from Your Life Without Adding Them to Your Personality. So a large part of her book is about how so many people in the crunchy community have a toxic personality because you always feel judged. If you are crunchy, you give this vibe of being judgmental because you yourself are actually insecure about your own crunchiness. And she describes some really good stories where there's one story in there where she like gave, what did she do? She gave a gift, a candle or something, some kind of gift at a party. And it was somebody that was really crunchy. And she kind of like looked at Emily and was just like, you know, that's like really toxic. But it was hand soap. It was hand soap.
Oh, okay.
She's like, you know, that's really toxic. Like there was no like, thanks so much. I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like literally just like a jerk, you know, and that's what the crunchy world will do to you. It will take you down this dark path of fear and paranoia. And what I would argue is like a lot of ways hypochondria to the point where you can't even like be a polite person.
Right.
And she does a great job at describing just like that process and how she was going down this pathway. There's so many like emotions tied to like that toxic personality. Like we've talked about anxiety, obsession. That's a big like symptom she talks about, like obsessing over things, just general fear, shame, blaming yourself. And that's a big like symptom is like if your kid gets sick and you blame yourself that you didn't like clean your surfaces with the right thing or you exposed them to some toxin, like that's a red flag. If you blame yourself as a parent for everything that you experience in your own health as well, not just your kids. Yep. Another symptom are asking the what ifs, you know, well, what if I would have done this? Or what if this is causing that? Or what if, you know, we're exposed to this that's going to hurt us long term? And it's just like this never ending obsession.
Yeah. And I think it's that obsession then that with social media, then it's like it just fuels it and it makes it. Cause like I said, then I got in on this parasite side of things and I'm like, please, I don't enjoy watching that in particular, but let me be clear. But I actually enjoy learning more about the crunchy life because it gives me empathy because I can look at some things and just be like, okay, hey, that's actually really helpful. I might want to implement that. Yeah. And then I can look at other things and be like, there's a couple of creators that I've literally thought like, I think you might have a problem. Yeah. Like I think you actually might need to go get some mental health like checkups here because you are ruining your life with this. And it doesn't make me judgmental as much as it makes me feel really sad that something would have such a hold over you and your mind that it would cause you to, I mean, it just seems very stressful. Yeah. Yeah. And let me say that, you know what is most toxic is stress in your life.
And she does a good job talking about that in the book.
Yeah. I mean, like stress is a big deal. And I feel sometimes a lot of crunchy people are really stressed out about their toxins, or you could just like chill out a little bit. And, you know, that brings me back to the episode that I talked about with formula feeding, you know, the reality of sometimes it's actually most important for there to be a reduction of stress for the health and wellness of the family. Exactly. Not actually literally, I'm going to breastfeed no matter what, even if I'm running my family into the ground and including myself. I'm like crying in the OR, which if you haven't listened to that episode, it's episode 3 about mom shame. But I think that it's just something that is really good. I like what you're talking about, kind of this litmus test or this way that you can look at yourself and say, are you getting too far down? And I honestly, personally haven't ever struggled with that. I think because I'm such a pragmatic person, naturally, I'm not naturally fearful. I'm not a worst case scenario person typically. I'm actually cool as a cucumber and like give me all the stressful situations and I'm not going to go worst case. I'm going to be like, let's attack this. I'm very pragmatic in that way. And so I have not been just very susceptible to the crunchy stuff. I'm able to kind of look at it. I enjoy learning about it. And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to do that. That won't fit into our lifestyle. That is incongruent with our family. And I just implement whatever I want to,
That's why you're a rock star, Jess.
Well, I'm not tooting my own horn in that way, because I think that if I were more of a fearful person,
right?
I mean, you can look at my feed and how much crunchy stuff is on it. You would think, oh, Jessica's really interested and is like doing all of this. And it's like, actually, no, I just enjoy learning about it. And I think because I have that natural disposition, I'm able to consume the stuff about coffee enemas and be like, heck no. Never gonna do that. Okay. Like, no.
And that you have a natural personality like that. You're very much in the moment, just like boom, make a decision, move on. And I could relate to her though, because I am more naturally like a worrier. And even though I didn't have anxiety about the stuff she described in her book as a mom and wife, but like I could just
you're a man, so that
right,
would be why.
because like men naturally don't obsess about a lot of that stuff either.
True.
Some do, but I could just relate to just like how she found herself down these, rabbit holes and stuff like that. So she had a good quote that I really liked on this whole idea of stress that you were talking about. And when she was talking about when you're trying to make a health decision or just anything about your life, she said, you have to ask yourself, is the anxiety that this information is causing me, is it worse for me than not implementing the changes the information suggests? Mm-hmm. That's a good quote.
That is good.
In other words, am I healthier if I'm not worried about all these things? That is wisdom.
That is wisdom.
And then she says, the answer to this predicament is balance. Yep. So go listen to the Balance Family podcast. It's in the book.
She said it.
No, someday we need to hang out with them because I like them. Her husband's really funny. He actually has little quotes in the book that are really good too.
You're funny too. I think you guys would get along.
Thank you so much. But I thought that is a great way to articulate that.
Yeah.
Is like, are you healthier not worrying about this? Is it worth the stress?
Well, and I think too, whenever you start learning and you start diving into it, it feels like you want to change all the things all at once. And I know for me, like we talked about last episode, I mentioned to you that I'm considering a water filter. I've been thinking about this for a long time. I have been aware of the water issue for years. But it just, you got to know your life season and you got to know where you're at. It just wasn't a major priority. I feel like it might be more of a priority that I want to talk with you about. We'll talk about it later because it can be, we need to talk about it because man, some of them are kind of expensive. But the point is that it can be a gradual kind of cinch by an inch type process where you slowly start making small changes. For us, I think it was where we ate what we ate. That was a big kind of starting place for us was, okay, how can we make what we eat a little healthier? Then I started working on, okay, how can I like change out our laundry detergent or look at our cleaning products? You can try to get my Bath and Body Works candles out of my cold, dead hands. Okay. I'm sorry. Like, no, gonna still light those. Okay.
I really hope you get some hate on social media and it'll help boost the algorithm.
Come on, give it to me. I don't care. I really like candles, but other little things that I've changed. And anyway, I think it's something that you can do kind of instead of feeling really overwhelmed and feeling like you need to change all the things, just take a small step. Yeah. Maybe go out to fast food less often or whatever, kind of make some small decisions and be able to implement it slowly. And that should help inoculate you from feeling a lot of stress and for you to be able to actually find things that really actually fit with your family and with your family situation and your culture in your home and your finances and all the things. Like it doesn't have to be all or nothing. I
want to talk about later, which is just like your values as a family. And something we value is physical activity and exercise. So for me, it's like I cannot be obsessing and wasting my time on other things if I've not prioritized certain values that I've set out to prioritize, like eating whole foods or exercising. And I don't think that's talked about enough sometimes, is like, you don't need to be crunchy to like eat better and exercise. It's really not about being crunchy. It's about being disciplined. And there's so much science that talks about exercise.
And no supplement is going to fix your crappy diet.
Exactly.
Like maybe just start eating better and start exercising. And that's what I was meaning earlier about the whole capitalistic nature of supplements and then these big food giants that are selling us processed foods. Like, actually, maybe we just all start exercising and eating better, like everyone has talked about forever. And like maybe actually the answer is the simplest thing.
Exactly.
That is the hardest thing.
Yes.
It's simple, but it's hard. And everyone wants a quick fix. And everyone wants to go get their coffee enema and all their things. But it's like, hey, actually maybe just eat better.
Yes. And have self-control and have an exercise routine. It's like, before you buy this product and this product and this product, and then and try to build
the capitalistic monster that you hate and that you think is terrible. Like, how about you just start doing common sense stuff and eat your Walmart produce that you bought with your hard-earned money, and don't go to Whole Foods. Like, just start eating vegetables first. Then you can get into all the organic stuff. But I don't know. This is like the whole like New Year's resolution thing, and just the like ditch to ditch. It's like, okay, we're going to go all in on something, and we're going to only eat organic, and we're going to, and it's like, okay, well actually maybe just start like eating a salad every day, like Ben, like a quick salad.
Quick salad, man.
I don't know. Sometimes I think that, again, that's my more pragmatic side that I think is what has been helpful to me with my whole crunchy evolution. And has kind of helped me not get sucked into it, is because sometimes I'm just like, I mean, I think if you're eating well, I don't know if you absolutely have to have all these supplements. I think that's kind of weird.
Some of the people that obsess, and I'm like, maybe you probably should exercise more and exhaust yourself so you won't have time or energy to obsess over these decisions.
Yeah, go train for a race.
She had another quote in the book. She said, the key is to find a happy medium of making healthier choices without obsessing about it. That is a good quote. That is wisdom. Is like, if you're obsessing about a choice, then that is a red flag. It has to be a red flag for you. And it's stealing your joy. And she talks about choosing joy in the book too, which is really good. She talks a lot about community and what do you really value, like relationships or like your food preferences being honored and you getting to go to some hangout, eat Whole Foods or whatever, you know, stick with your health goals. And she talks about how like she struggled making friends and stuff, and that the crunchy movement only made that so much worse for her. And I thought that was just, it was really cool that she just shared her journey inside of that. And that's been a big growing up thing for us too. And the older you get, like we're in our late 30s now, it's like the older you get, like you just see how stupid some of the things you worried about were when you were first becoming an adult, and you first learn about big pharma and big, you know, it's just like, oh my gosh, there's all these powers that be. It's just like, yeah, unfortunately, that's just kind of how the world works. But the older you get, you should learn to hone in your values. And something we value is community and relationships. Like that's actually, relationships actually make your life better than all this holistic stuff. Like that is the number one thing that we all deep down truly need, is like relationships.
And it actually has the biggest effect on your health.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's studies about that, people who are lonely and don't have community and relationships actually on average just don't fare as well, unfortunately. And I think you're right.
And I would also say a big force at play that's helped us come out of like the dark side of some of these rabbit holes is just like our relationship with God and our spiritual outlook on life. That to us as a family, a lot of our decisions are spiritual ones. They're not natural ones. A lot of it is not X's and O's and this is what science says, or a lot of it's like, what is right for our family? What do we feel like God has designed and for our family? And related to that, as we've shared in previous episodes, we have a daughter with a lot of health problems. We understand how fragile this life is. We understand how temporary this world is. And we understand that like these shells, our bodies, like they just aren't going to last forever. And worrying and obsessing over some toxin that you can't even quantify how many more months or years that's going to put on your life. Worrying about that is just not worth our time.
Nope, it's not. And I think too, not only with that, but I think when you were talking about our values and stuff, I do think that there is a place though for us to talk about just intentionality.
Yeah.
Because I think that on the other side of things, you can get so caught up in the busyness and just kind of like autopilot through life and not really be intentional about the way that you spend your time. And so I know for us, like when we have made our crunchy decisions, like we talked about last week, us harvesting our own meat, doing our garden stuff, like we didn't just do that of like it's healthier. Check, we should do this. But actually, what is this going to build inside of our home and inside of our kids? And so our girls are involved with the harvesting of our meat. Our girls are involved with the gardening. Our girls are involved with cooking. They all are learning how to make things from scratch. We do a lot of camping. We do a lot of stuff outdoors. Like all of that stuff that we do actually isn't even totally all about us being crunchy. It's actually more about us building our home and the values that we have and the things that we want our kids and our girls to be instilled with.
Yeah.
A sense of knowing how to work hard for things.
Outside.
enjoying the outdoors and really, I mean, there's so many benefits to just literally being outside. And so I think that when we're making these decisions though, it does take a level of intentionality and you can't be afraid to have to make some sacrifices with your time, with your money, with your effort. It actually takes a lot more work to harvest your own meat. I don't know if you know that, but it's a lot of work, y'all.
Yeah, it is.
And I mean, I literally just finished up last week with some deer that we had harvested months ago. I mean, it takes a lot of time and a lot of planning and preparation, but for us, it is about this intentionality and us really living our lives in a way that is just we know is gonna be beneficial on all accounts, not just health.
Yeah. Being healthier and, being more holistic is not a performance. Nobody is grading you. And that's what she does a good job in the book. Like if you feel judged, like you're not perceiving it right. And it should be fun. It should result in you just enjoying food more, enjoying the decisions, the choices you make for your lifestyle. Should not feel like a burden. And so that brings us back to this balance. Like balance is not about buying the right product and not being too crunchy or too silky. It's really just about how you carry it all internally, in your spirit, in your emotions, in your mind. Like if it is a burden, you're carrying it wrong, period.
Yeah, I really agree. And so I think in conclusion of our 2-part series on crunchy life, the dark side, the good side, I think maybe a takeaway, at least for me, is to continue to consider what are some ways that I can be more intentional in my life and make choices that are for my health without it becoming just dominating in my life, and really being able to distill down also just like, what do I value and what does the Lord want for us to prioritize? And so for me, my next step is to check out our water. But no, because I actually feel compelled to do that. And so I do feel like I'm like, hey, I think that would be good. There's some health things that I have been thinking about. And it's like, I think that might be good. Am I going to go crazy? No. Am I going to buy the most premium water filter that's like $10,000? No, I'm not.
Right, the man that manages the finances, I can tell you, sure as heck ain't going to do that.
But I think that you can always just take one thing and be like, okay, I'm going to work on this one thing and work on it. Low key, no big deal, but just make a change and make a choice. Thank you so much for listening today. It would mean so much to us if you left a review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you heard this.
And let us know your thoughts on today's episode by leaving a comment on Spotify or YouTube, where you can also watch these episodes.